Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tillerson, I know that you're new to this, and I know that the chairman was trying to help you out on the question of lobbying on sanctions. You stated on the record that, to your knowledge, neither you nor Exxon ever lobbied against sanctions, that you were merely seeking information. I have 4 different lobbying reports totaling millions of dollars, as required by the Lobbying Disclosure Act, that lists ExxonMobil's lobbying activities on 4 specific pieces of legislation authorizing sanctions, including the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Accountability and Divestment Act of 2010, the Russian Aggression Prevention Act of 2014, the Ukraine Freedom Support Act of 2014, and the Stand for Ukraine Act. Now, I know you're new to this, but it's pretty clear. My understanding is that when you employ lobbyists who submit lobbying forms under the law, you are taking a position. Is that not correct?
If the form clearly indicates whether we were, I don't know, I haven't seen the form you're holding in your hand, so I don't know whether it indicates were we lobbying for the sanctions or were we lobbying against the sanctions.
I know you weren't lobbying for the sanctions, but
well, if the form
it says specifically, for example, here, specific lobbying issues, Russian aggression prevention of 2014, provisions related to energy. You weren't lobbying for sanctions on energy, were you?
I think that's a description of the subject that was discussed. And I haven't seen the form, Senator, so I don't want to be presumptuous.
Well, you don't. Here. Let me just edify you for the future. You don't need a lobbying disclosure form to simply seek information and clarification about a bill. That's not lobbying. Lobbying specifically is to promote a view, a position, and whatnot. So that's, I'd ask unanimous consent to have these included in the record. So there was lobbying here. And I know that Senator Booker asked you about USA Engage, which you said you don't know about, but ExxonMobil is listed on USA Engage, whose whole purpose, and I'm sure that while Exxon is a huge corporation, like the State Department is a very big entity, that you may not know every minutia of what's going on, but you have to generally understand that you're giving direction as to whether or not you want to be lobbying on certain issues or not, you want to be taking positions on certain issues or not. And so just like you told me earlier that in your world conversation with the President-elect, you didn't discuss Russia, it's a little difficult to think you actually don't know that Exxon was lobbying on these issues of sanctions.
My understanding is those reports are required whether you're lobbying for something or you're lobbying against something. You're still required to report that you have lobbying activities.
So you believe you were paying monies to lobby for sanctions?
I don't know. All I know, Senator, is I don't
Could you imagine being in a position in which you would have your company and its shareholders pay money to lobby for sanctions that would affect your bottom line?
I don't know, Senator. It would depend on the circumstance.
All right. Let me turn to Mexico, a little different part of the world than we've been discussing. Some of us care about the Western Hemisphere. Last week, the President-elect tweeted that any money spent on building the Great Wall will be paid by Mexico. Mr. Tillerson, building a wall on the southern border and having Mexico pay for it has been a hallmark chant at Trump rallies. Now the President-elect says the American people will pay for it and then that the Mexicans will reimburse us. I also want to point out that the last time a country tried to wall itself completely from its neighbor was in Berlin in 1961, and that wall was constructed by communist East Germany. Former Mexican president last week tweeted, and it seems that somehow we are conducting foreign policy by tweets these days, that Trump may ask whoever he wants, but still neither myself nor Mexico are going to pay for his racist monument, another promise he can't keep, close quotes. As you're well aware, the President-elect has repeatedly referred to Mexican citizens who have come to the United States as saying they're sending, quote, people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. So, Mr. Tillerson, do you think Mexicans are criminals, drug dealers, and rapists?
I would never characterize an entire population of people with any single term at all.
Do you think that those comments help our relationship with Mexico, our third largest trading partner, a trading partner that represents $583 billion in trades of goods and services, including our second largest goods export market?
Mexico's a longstanding neighbor and friend of this country.
And so that doesn't help your job as the Secretary of State, does it, if you are to achieve nomination?
Well, we're going to engage with Mexico because of their importance to us in this hemisphere, and we have many, many common issues, common areas of concern.
Let me turn to another part of the Western Hemisphere. Senator Rubio referred to it, so he took care of some of the things I cared about. When you and I met, you indicated to me on Cuba that you needed more time, which is fair, to come to a conclusion about your opinion on U.S.-Cuba policy and the Obama administration changes. I want to share with you the latest report by, it's not me, okay, by Amnesty International, that noted, quote, despite increasingly open diplomatic relations, severe restrictions on freedoms of expression, association, and movement continued. Thousands of cases of harassment of government critics and arbitrary arrests and detentions were reported. Thousands, that's their quote. The Cuban Commission for Human Rights and National Reconciliation, which works within Cuba, documented more than 8,600 politically motivated detentions of government opponents and activists during the year. There's a group of women who march every Sunday to church with gladiolas. They're called the Women in White. They get beaten savagely simply because of their peaceful protests. Now, I would hope that you would agree with me that if our engagement is still going to allow that to take place, then something's wrong with our engagement. Something fell short. And I have a specific question on Cuba. Do you think that as a condition of establishing diplomatic relations with Cuba, we at a minimum should have insisted on the return of fugitives, cop killers, like New Jersey cop killer Joanne Chesimard and other American fugitives of justice being harbored by the Castro regime?
I do, Senator.
Thank you very much. Now, would you finally commit yourself, if you are confirmed as Secretary of State, to work with us and others, New Mexico, others have cop killers that are in, and other fugitives that are in Cuba, to make that conditioning of any future transactions as it relates to Cuba?
Senator, if confirmed, I look forward to working with you most specifically, as well as Senator Rubio and others who I know have a great depth of knowledge on Cuba, to ensure that we are not relaxing the pressure on Cuba to reform its oppressive regime. And certainly, as I indicated in response to a question earlier and in my opening remarks, the Cuban leadership got a lot out of the most recent deal. We need to make no mistake about where the flows of funds are going inside of Cuba. And the Cuban people got almost nothing. And as I indicated, the President-elect, I think, has been very clear on his intent to direct a bottoms-up review of the entire relationship with Cuba.
Thank you.